I still can't believe it happened. One minute, I'm sipping coffee on my front porch, enjoying the quiet hum of my suburban street, and the next, I get a letter from my HOA stating they were fining me $18,000. $18,000. For my lawn. Yes, you heard that right. $18,000 for something as simple as letting my grass grow a little too tall. Biggest mistake of their life, as it turns out. But let me start from the beginning. I moved into Cedarbrook Heights 3 years ago. Perfect little neighborhood, picket fences, manicured lawns, the kind of place where everyone waves when they pull out of their driveway. I loved it. I was a quiet person, kept to myself, worked from home, spent weekends with my dog, Max, and a small vegetable patch in my backyard. Honestly, I thought I had landed in paradise. That is, until I met the HOA. It started innocently enough. A friendly neighbor named Karen waved as I mowed my lawn. She lived 3 doors down, always impeccably dressed, perfectly coiffed hair, her yard the kind of place you could eat off the grass. One day, she stopped me mid-mow. "You know, the HOA has very strict rules," she said, pointing to a small, yellowed notice nailed to a stake in her yard. "They've been really cracking down lately." I smiled, nodded, thanked her, and thought nothing of it. A week later, I noticed a small envelope in my mailbox, stamped with the HOA logo. My stomach sank before I even opened it. Inside was a notice: my lawn was out of compliance. I laughed. Out of compliance. My grass was maybe an inch longer than usual. The notice warned me to fix it immediately or face a fine. I rolled my eyes, trimmed the lawn, and assumed that was the end of it. But then, things escalated fast. Every minor detail became an issue. My garden gnomes were unauthorized decorations. A small flag I had planted was non-compliant. I was being nitpicked in ways that made no sense. I tried to reason with them, emailing the HOA board politely, asking for clarification. The responses were short, cold, almost gleeful in their power. And then, the letter arrived. $18,000. For my lawn. They claimed it was cumulative fines for ongoing violations. I couldn't even process it. $18,000. I laughed out loud. I called Karen, hoping for a sympathetic ear. She smiled politely and said, "Well, rules are rules. You know how it is." That's when I realized I had to fight back. I wasn't just going to pay and roll over. Something in me snapped. This wasn't about grass anymore, it was about principle. And if they thought they could bully me into submission, they were dead wrong. The first step was gathering evidence. I took pictures of my lawn over months, documented everything meticulously. Emails, notices, even the way my neighbors' lawns looked, they were never fined for things that were clearly more severe. Then, I started talking to other residents. Turns out, I wasn't the only one being targeted. A retired couple down the street had been fined for unauthorized birdhouses, another family got notices for incorrect mulch color. The HOA wasn't just strict, it was petty, vindictive, and, as I was learning, completely overstepping its authority. One night, I stayed up until 2 a.m., poring over HOA bylaws, city ordinances, even state law. Every document, every clause. I wanted to know exactly where they could and couldn't touch me. That's when I found it, a loophole. One tiny line buried in the rules stated that fines could not exceed $500 per violation unless a hearing was held. And guess what? They never held a hearing for me. They'd overstepped by thousands of dollars. I felt a thrill, a rush of vindication. Finally, I had leverage. But I couldn't make a move too early. I had to be strategic. I started planting strategically non-compliant flowers in front of my house, the kind they love to nitpick, bright, wild, untamed. I left little garden gnomes where they weren't allowed. Every day, I watched them squirm from a distance, HOA inspectors peeking over fences, shaking their heads, taking photos. And every night, I double-checked my evidence. I was ready for the showdown. The HOA board called me in for a meeting, expecting me to fold. The tension in the room was palpable. Karen was there, smirking as if she already had victory in her pocket. I calmly laid out my case, piece by piece, copies of bylaws, photos of my lawn, records of fines issued incorrectly, and, most importantly, legal clauses proving they had no authority to levy $18,000 without a hearing. Their smug expressions faltered. I could see it, the first crack. And then came the best part. I reminded them, gently, that all the notices and fines had been documented, and I had also spoken to a lawyer. I didn't need to sue yet, but I made it clear, I would. Every fine, every dollar, would be contested in court. Suddenly, the room went silent. The same people who had laughed at me just a month ago were now looking uneasy. I could practically see the wheels turning in their heads. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. The HOA was rescinding all fines. Not just the $18,000, they erased everything. My out-of-compliance lawn. Officially compliant. My gnomes. Safe. I smiled at that letter like it was a golden trophy. It wasn't just about winning, it was about standing up, refusing to be bullied, and turning the tables. Even better, word got out in the neighborhood. Other residents started questioning the HOA's authority. Complaints flooded in. The board, once untouchable, suddenly had to answer to the very community they had tried to control. The tables had turned completely. And me? I spent that weekend planting wildflowers, letting my grass grow a little taller than their rules allowed, and smiling every time a neighbor winked at me as they walked by. If you were me, what would you do in this HOA fined me $18,000 for my lawn, biggest mistake of their life, situation? Comment below, I want to hear your strategies. Because trust me, fighting back doesn't always mean breaking laws. Sometimes, it's just about knowing your rights, being patient, and letting a little chaos bloom in the perfectly trimmed lawns of suburbia. So next time you see a tiny yellow notice stapled to a stake in your yard, don't panic. Take a deep breath. Document everything. And remember, sometimes, the people who think they hold all the power are just waiting for someone brave enough to remind them they don't. And just between us, I haven't just won this battle, I've changed the rules of the game entirely. $18,000. Gone. My lawn. My rules. My peace of mind. Priceless.